Welcome all of you to my YouTube channel, NutraManagement. Myself, Professor Debidas Ghosh, and today I'd like to discuss on the topic lifestyle and diabetes mellitus. Now, lifestyle, which is the most important part of today's life of all of the individual, mostly associated with the several non-communicable diseases. And these non-communicable diseases are cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, infertility, gout, etc. And out of these, diabetes mellitus is one of them. The incidence rate of the diabetes mellitus in our country is gradually increased year after year. And from present research, it has been proposed that lifestyle is one of the most important modifiable cause for diabetes mellitus. Due to the complication of the diabetes mellitus, so many systems are also affected in our body. And due to the complexity of the lifestyle, especially in our country, which is not health friendly, is closely associated with high incidence rate of the diabetes mellitus. As per WHO, World Health Organization, the diabetes mellitus is increased in such a rate in our country that the name of our country would be changed. And as per WHO, it would be the diabetic capital of the world within 2030. Now, in this lecture, I like to emphasize on the unhealthy food style, unhealthy work style, under lifestyle, how are associated with diabetes mellitus. And in this connection, I like to mention that 60% of the death of India is associated with non-communicable disease. And diabetes mellitus is the third killer disease in our country. And the morbidity rate, not the mortality, morbidity rate due to the diabetes mellitus is very high in respect to the other non-communicable diseases, because so many systems are also inactive due to the diabetes mellitus. Now, we like to discuss that what is lifestyle. Lifestyle, that is the practices, habits, behaviors which are followed in our daily life. It has mainly two domains. One is known as the food style, and other one is known as the work style. It is broadly divided into two types, known as healthy lifestyle or health-friendly lifestyle. If we follow the health-friendly lifestyle, the probability of such non-communicable diseases, which are now referred as lifestyle disorders, would be decreased. In contrast, if we follow the unhealthy lifestyle, unfavorable lifestyle, undesirable lifestyle, the incidence rate of that non-communicable diseases, especially lifestyle disorders like diabetes mellitus, would be increased at a high rate. Now, I have already mentioned the major domain of the lifestyle is food style. So, what is food style? Attitudes, behaviors, practices, habits for food selection, for food consumption in our daily life or in routine basis is referred as food style. And the major components of the food style are food composition. Food composition, that means that what are the different nutrients which are present at what quantity in our daily meal, which is referred as food composition or meal composition. That means this meal is enriched in complex carbohydrate or simple carbohydrate. It is enriched in first-class protein or second-class protein. It is enriched in saturated fat or unsaturated fat, and so on. Similarly, food frequency or meal frequency, it is referred as the number of meals which are consumed by an individual per day without changing the quantity of energy consumption. So, energy consumption remains fixed. But if this total energy is divided in unequal fashion on the basis of workload at the different phase of the day, and the number of meals is increased than the routine basis, then it is health-friendly food style. Normally, food frequency is 2 per day or 3 per day, but it is not healthy in nature. If the required energy is divided into 5 to 6 meals per day, then it is health-friendly food style. Because due to limited quantity of energy per meal, the amount of glucose absorption from intestine to bloodstream would be limited. And so, there is a minimum chance for sudden influx of glucose from intestine to bloodstream, and thereby the probability of diabetes mellitus would be decreased. And regarding food frequency, the most important point is that quantity of energy consumption in dinner. As per WHO, the energy consumption never more than 20% of daily energy in dinner. But in our food style, it is just reverse. We consume about 40 to 50% of daily energy in dinner. And throughout the night, our physical activity is very minimum. And so there is energy imbalance between the energy intake and energy expenditure throughout night, which is most important cause for elevation in blood glucose that may lead to diabetes mellitus. Now, this food style is again divided into 2 types. That is health-friendly food style, which is most desirable to us from the viewpoints of proper health maintenance, sound health maintenance, disease-free state of our body. And another one, unhealthy food style, which is not desirable. And this unhealthy food style is closely linked with high probability of lifestyle disorders, including diabetes mellitus. Now, another domain of the lifestyle is the work style. What is work style? Nature, intensity, duration of work, which are actually followed by ourselves in our daily life in routine basis is referred as work style. There are so many types of work style, of which some are health-friendly work style and some are unhealthy work style. As for example, stressful work style. If the work is associated with physical stress, mental stress, psychological stress, then there is a high probability for the free radical generation reactive oxygen species, which in short known as ROS, ROS, reactive oxygen species generation. And these free radicals, reactive oxygen species, are most important causative agents for cellular injuries that may lead to degradation of different enzymes in our cells, different proteins in our cells, which are associated with low metabolic utilization of glucose that may lead to hyperglycemia and diabetes mellitus. Similarly, continuous work style. If an individual is engaged in long period of work without any break, without any rest, that results imposition of stress in his or her body that may lead to diabetes mellitus. But intermittent work style, that means when the work is divided into work and rest, this is the health-friendly work style, where the stress imposition, free radical generation, all such probabilities are minimized. Similarly, static postural work style. If an individual is engaged in such a work in unique posture, which is known as static posture, for a long time, it is another cause for stress imposition, and it is the unhealthy work style. But dynamic postural work style is a health-friendly work style. Similarly, heavy, moderate, light work style are another types of the work style. Out of these, heavy work style is closely linked with stress imposition that may result lifestyle disorders. So our duty is to follow health favorable work style to control the incidence rate of lifestyle disorders in our community. And we try to avoid, as far as practicable, the health deteriorating work style. So from these slides, we may say that we must follow the health-friendly food style and health-friendly work style as far as practicable to control the high incidence rate of such lifestyle disorders in our society. Now, what is diabetes mellitus? It is a non-communicable disease, NCD, non-communicable disease. But in 21st century, its name has been changed, which is referred as lifestyle health disorder. And WHO also pointed out that diabetes mellitus is not considered as a disease, but it is a syndrome. Why? Because it is associated with so many systems in our body. And a cluster of symptoms are developed in such patients who are suffering from diabetes mellitus. And that cluster of symptoms known as syndrome. So this is the first criteria of the syndrome, which is fulfilled in diabetes mellitus. And the second important criteria for the syndrome, that inheritable tendency. That means when one trait or one feature is transmitted from generation after generation, then it is known as inheritable trait. Diabetes mellitus is such a disease which has an inheritable tendency. That means through diabetic gene, DB gene, which are present in nuclear DNA as well as mitochondrial DNA, this disease is also transmitted from parental generation to filial generation. And if we study this nature of inheritance of this diabetes mellitus, it has been noted that the probability of this inheritance from maternal side to filial generation is more than the paternal generation. And this is referred as mitochondrial diabetes. Because in fertilization, the oocyte participate totally, where mitochondria is also present. So that mitochondrial DB gene is coming from mother side. But in fertilization, where the sperm nucleus participate only, mitochondria has no role in such fertilization. And thereby the embryo did not get any mitochondria from paternal side. Now, what are the major symptoms of the diabetes mellitus? One is known as polyphagia. That is, the food intake tendency is gradually increased in such patients, and that is due to the defect of the satiety center and feeding center in hypothalamus. The satiety center activity is decreased and the feeding center activity is increased in such pathophysiological condition that results polyphagia. Polydipsia, that the thirst sensation is increased drastically in such pathophysiological disorders. And this is due to the hyperactivity of the thirst center present in hypothalamus, a part of the brain. And this activation of thirst center is due to the hyperosmolarity of blood that stimulates the central osmotic receptor, which stimulates the thirst center. Polyuria, that is urine volume, urination frequency, both are increased in such condition, and the urine become associated with presence of glucose. So polyuria is also noted in this pathophysiological condition. It is also associated with the retinopathy. There is the retinal degeneration is also noted in such condition. And it may lead to diabetes-induced blindness. Similar nephropathy, that the kidney dysfunction is also noted in this condition. Neuropathy, that is the peripheral nerve degeneration, is also noted in this disease. So these are the major symptoms. What are the major types of diabetes mellitus? One is known as IDDM. That is the insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus. In this diabetes mellitus, plasma level of insulin is low. And this is referred as juvenile diabetes mellitus, which is mainly noted below the age of 20 years. And another major type of DM, that is the diabetes mellitus, is NIDDM, non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. In such condition, plasma level of insulin is normal or more than high, more than normal. In spite of that, blood glucose level is high. So it is not dependent on insulin. And so it is known as NIDDM. And that is due to the insulin resistance. In this condition, insulin receptors are desensitized to insulin. And thereby the glucose utilization in cell is decreased. That may lead to NIDDM. Now, what are the diagnostic tests for diabetes mellitus? First one, fasting blood glucose level. If it is more than 110 mg per dl, then there is a chance of diabetes mellitus. But this test is not considered as a very sensitive, reliable, valid, acceptable test for the diagnosis of this disease or syndrome. Why? Because it is very much associated with stress. Stress imposition may result elevation in blood glucose within 5 to 10 minutes. So before blood sample collection, if that individual remains in stress condition, then the erroneous result may be collected. Another reason is that some preconditioning should be followed for proper quantification of fasting blood glucose. And what are these preconditions? That is 12 hours fasting is another condition. Other one is that composition of the previous dinner, that is another controlling factor for reliable fasting blood glucose level. If that previous dinner is consists of high carbohydrate or low carbohydrate or high dietary fiber, then it may influence the fasting blood glucose level. On the basis of that, WHO proposed the most important sensor for the diagnosis of diabetes, that is known as glycated hemoglobin or HbA1c. It is also known as glucose memory test. It is not influenced by immediate stress. It is not influenced by previous dinner, composition of the previous dinner. And from such reasons, it is reliable, it is valid, it is acceptable, it is accurate. Now, what is the normal level of HbA1c? That is less than 5.7%. In the pre-diabetic condition, it is 5.6 to 6.4%. And in diabetic condition, it is more than 6.5%. Another sensor, random blood glucose level, which is more than 180 mg per day. But the most important test for the diagnosis of diabetes is plasma C-peptide level. What is C-peptide? In beta cell, we know that insulin is synthesized. But the precursor of insulin is known as proinsulin, which is consists of 3 peptide chains. That is A chain, B chain, and C chain. But when proinsulin is converted into insulin, the A peptide and B peptide chains are connected with each other by disulfide bonds. And the C peptide is removed. And at the time of secretion of insulin from beta cell, the C peptide and insulin both are secreted from this cell at the ratio of 1:1. So why we do not consider the plasma insulin as important sensor for the diagnosis of this disease? The important reason is that there is an enzyme known as insulinase present in liver that may destroy the insulin. So if an individual can able to synthesize insulin at normal level, but insulinase activity is high, then plasma insulin level will be decreased. And that may lead to our interpretation that beta cell activity is low. In contrast, if we measure the C-peptide, this C-peptide is not degraded by any enzyme in our body. So if the C-peptide level is normal, then it indicates the beta cell status is okay. But if the C-peptide level is low, then it indicates that insulin synthesis has been decreased. So if the C-peptide level is normal or more than high, but if the blood glucose level is above than the normal, then there is a chance of NIDDM. But if the C-peptide is low, then there is a chance of IDDM. Now, I like to focus that food style modification to combat diabetes mellitus. As we have already mentioned that diabetes mellitus is a lifestyle disorder, and most important component of lifestyle is the food style. So what are the major modifications in food style which are desirable to combat, to fight against diabetes mellitus? One is known as meal frequency, which is 4 to 5 per day, with constant daily energy consumption. And if that meal frequency is increased, then the energy consumption would be limited per day and per meal, and so the chance of sudden elevation in glucose level in blood would be minimized. Dietary fiber enriched food consumption is the most important food style. The dietary fiber, which is non-digestible carbohydrates, mainly in our digestive system. And quantity of dietary fibers consumption per day should be 25 to 30 grams. And this dietary fiber can also limit the glucose absorption from intestine to bloodstream. Complex and unhydrolyzed carbohydrate inclusion in meal is most important food style here. If we consume complex and unhydrolyzed carbohydrates, then the glucose production in our intestine would be minimized, or the glucose production would be noted at a very limited rate. And so the sudden influx of glucose transportation from intestine to bloodstream would be limited. That may decrease the chance of diabetes mellitus. And on the basis of this reason, we always prefer wheat-made bread as an important ingredient of meal over boiled rice to prevent diabetes mellitus. Because in boiled rice, the carbohydrate is hydrolyzed. But in wheat-made bread, the carbohydrate is complex and unhydrolyzed. And thereby the glucose is produced through digestion at a controlled rate. Similarly, nutraceuticals, there are the nutrients having pharmaceutical activity, known as nutraceuticals. And antioxidant type of nutraceutical consumption in meal is most important criteria of healthy food style. These antioxidants may decrease the free radical generation and control the diabetes mellitus. These antioxidants are lycopene, which is present in tomato, watermelon, ripe papaya, etc. Similarly, catechin, epigallocatechin gallate, which are present in black tea, green tea, are major antioxidants. Another one, avoid fast food, junk food, processed food, preserved food. This food intake in daily life is unhealthy food style. Because such fast food, junk food, processed food, preserved food, where trans fat is maximum, and that may increase the chance of diabetes mellitus. Besides this, the antioxidant vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, and antioxidant minerals like zinc, selenium, all are present at a very low level. Similarly, avoid overeating tendency is also another unhealthy food style that may lead to diabetes mellitus. Now, what is work-style modification for the prevention of diabetes mellitus? We must avoid physical inactivity. That means in daily life, the manual labor must be included, which is responsible for the balance between the energy consumption and energy utilization. If there is an imbalance, that means energy consumption is more than energy utilization, that may lead to diabetes mellitus. Do not follow the stressful work is another work-style modification. So mental stress linked work should be minimized as far as practicable. We must follow the intermittent work instead of continuous work. We must follow the static postural work. We must avoid static postural work and follow the dynamic postural work to prevent the diabetes mellitus. Similarly, strenuous work at a stretch should be minimized. So all are these work style and food style which are responsible for diabetes mellitus. And if we follow the healthy food style and healthy work style, then chance of diabetes mellitus would be limited. So thank you all and see again.